Hello, it's Christmas and well, it's December, it's Christmas and it's time for Advent of Code. And we are going to be approaching it like with Advent of Code. It's a good way to learn new technologies, and we're going to be approaching it through using a database this time. So if you've never used a database before, it's going to be great in order to show you kind of how to get set up and work with it. If you've never used Advent of Code before, it's a really cool like set of programming challenges. One's released every day up till the 25th of December, and they get progressively harder, and there's two parts to them. For every problem you solve, you get 1 star, 2 stars every day, and you want to collect 50 stars in total. If you manage that, it's impressive. You might notice that I've already got 1 star. I'm on the Advent of Code webpage at the moment. You can see I've signed in. If you've not signed in, you will need an account if you're following along. I've already got a start. I've already done this stream for like 2.5 hours, and I just didn't press go, and so I'm just doing it to no one. So we're gonna redo everything. That's fine, but that's the reason I've already got 1 star there. It all went a bit wrong. So first things first, how are we going to approach this? So we're going to be doing this in every problem. We're going to be solving in 2 stages. We're going to be thinking about importing the data and preparing the data, and then we're going to think about actually using that data to solve the problem. So we're going to be working on 2 very distinct parts of the program. We're going to be using C#, .dotnet to do this, and I'm going to show you how to get set up. There is one prerequisite. You will need Visual Studio installed. I'm using the Community Edition. It's completely free. I'm not going to go through getting that installed because it's easy. But there are a few other things that we will go through getting installed. So first of all, we have Rancher Desktop. Now, if I've been clever, I've already downloaded this. Yes, I've already downloaded this, but if you go to Rancher Desktop, the links are in the description of this video. You can download for your particular, I downloaded for Windows x64. We're going to need this because this is what's going to be able to, we're going to run our database in, kind of. If you've never heard of containers before, then this is what we're going to run our database in. If you have heard of containers before, then this is what we're going to run our database container in. We're also going to need to download Azure Data Studio, and this is going to allow us to see what data is actually in our database, like easily. It's completely free, just download it, and I've got those 2 pre-prepared. It will take you to this page. I just took the user installer x64. Your mileage may vary, but there we are. And then we'll get on to the, this is Visual Studio 2022, easy, just go onto it, press download. So we're going to get Rancher and we're going to get Azure Data Studio installed. So I'm going to double click on Rancher, that is preparing to install. And Rancher, you could use Docker Desktop. There are a few different technologies you can use. I'm using Rancher because it's open source, you don't need an account, and it's just kind of, it's good enough for what we want to do. There are a lot of arguments to be made for using Docker Desktop, but it's beyond the scope of what we're doing here. Do I want to install it for everyone or just me? Let's do it for just me. Install. Lovely. While that's getting done, we'll get Azure Data Studio installing as well. So let's open that. I accept. And yeah, that's fine. We'll just pop it there. Yep. Next. Add to path. Yep. That's fine. Install. Okay, so we need to actually get ourselves a database, and in order to do that, we are going to go to this link here, Docker Hub, or hub.docker.com, and we're going to get ourselves a Microsoft SQL Server. You're going to, is it asking me for things? No, so they're both done. Okay, cool. Let's run that, finish, and let's run that and finish. Okay, great. So this is Azure Data Studio. We're going to come back to this. We don't need this right now. Let's delete that. Yep. And this is Rancher. Come here, Rancher. We're going to come back to this in a second as well. You will need a little app called Terminal, or you'll just need to open a terminal. I'm running PowerShell here, and we're going to just execute a PowerShell command. You're going to need to do that in order to do this. We're going to scroll down here, and we're going to take the second command. So we've got one that uses a preview version, but we don't want a preview version, we want the latest good version. So we want this command here, and we're going to run this in the command line in the terminal. I'm running it in PowerShell. Just going to paste it in. I'm not going to actually press enter on it yet because we need to change one thing. So you can see it's using a Docker command. Docker commands, ooh, that's a good thing. That's a good point. We need to just go to Rancher, edit, no, file, preferences, and we just need to make sure that in the Rancher preferences for container engine, we have Docker D selected, which we do, so that's fine. Also, Rancher, when you first install it, it might be like doing stuff secretly down here, in just like down there, here. It might be like a little loading bar or something. So just be aware of that. It might be like updating things. Just let it do the updates before you do anything else. It's installed a bunch of Docker stuff for us, and Docker is essentially a way of running apps in their own little virtual machines. They're self-contained. You can bring them to life, you can destroy them. They're really useful for all kinds of programming related things. We're going to come up to here where it says MySQL SA password, and we're going to change this to the strongest password in the world, password 1. Okay. Why am I using a really simple password? One reason, we're not storing any sensitive data in this database whatsoever. So it doesn't matter if someone was to hack into this database, because they're just going to get a bunch of Advent of Code puzzle data that they could get themselves, so it really doesn't matter. If I was making this database for anything that held anything even remotely important, then obviously I'd be a lot more considerate around what this password is. But for password 1 is absolutely fine. It's got a capital letter and it's got a number, so it's pretty strong. We need to make sure that accept EULA is set to Y. They've done that by default. Port mapping 1433 to 1433, that's fine. And then we've got this, which is the location of the container that we want to download. Now, if this all goes well, when we press enter, oh, it did it automatically. Now, I've already got the image downloaded from when I did this previously. Yours will take a little bit of time if this is your first time doing it. It will like have a load of loading bars. It will be pulling stuff. Just wait, just let it do its thing, and it will. You'll get a similar result. Okay, so that's downloaded. Now, if we go to Rancher, now we should be able to see. If we go to containers, where it's got this little like flask. Oh, we got. I did it again. I didn't give this container a name, but that's okay. Let's delete this. Sleepy Chandrasekhar is running. Okay, so we've got ourselves our container. It's up and running, and we can check to see whether this is working by going to Azure Data Studio. So I'm going to open this up, and we're going to connect. We're going to try and connect to that that container. So there are a few ways to do this. We can go up here and press new connection. We can press here, new connection, and we can probably press new connection here. It really wants you to create a connection. Let's do it. And we can see here, let's clear the, yep. Let's clear the list. So we're gonna go through and just configure this. So the first thing we're doing is it's a Microsoft SQL server. We're gonna do this as parameters. The server is our local host, because it's on our local machine. And it is on port 1433. How do we know that? Well, if we go to Rancher, we can see here ports 1433 to 1433. So the port is mapped the same either side, so we don't even need to worry about which one is which. Just know that it's 1433. So localhost, comma 1433. We're not going to do Windows authentication. We're going to do a SQL login. Our username is SA for, I think it's super admin, something like that. And our password is the password that we just set in that command. So password 1. I'm pretty sure I'm going to retype that because I'm not 100% sure that I typed that correctly. I'm going to press remember password, just why not? Database. No, there should be no database in there, so it doesn't really matter. We just leave it as default. Encrypt. I'm not sure what we need, so we're going to go for optional because that sounds like if it is true, then that's fine. Trust server certificate, we're going to leave that. Server group, we're going to leave that. Name, I'm just going to call it local SQL server, and we're going to connect. And if we typed everything incorrectly, it should think about it, and then it should just work. This is, I'm not going to lie, I thought it would take seconds. I don't know what the holdup is. This is running. This is happy. Why aren't you happy? localhost 1433, SQL login, yep. Might just be having a moment. It's okay, we all have moments. Note connection error. Okay. Okay, cool. So, trust server certificate, let's keep that on false. Server group, no, let's leave that. Parameters, localhost 1433. I've definitely missed something very silly. Let's just try the password again one more time. It's if it doesn't connect pretty much straight away, then you know something's wrong. SQL has like quite a long timeout, so it can like take a while to do things. I wonder whether we just need to reboot it. Just need to reboot the container. Let's. Oh, we don't want that yet. Let's go back to the. Yeah, this is timing out. Let's press cancel on this. Let's come over to here. We can press the 3 dots, or we can right click on it. Probably right click on it. Yeah, or we can tick it and then press stop. Loads of ways to stop it. And then we're going to start it again. So I'm going to click on it. I'm going to start it. I really wish it wasn't called this. It's not very useful. Not a very useful name, but we'll just call it the Sleepy DB. Right, let's come over to Azure Data Studio again and see if we can connect. This is going to be a. This is not going to be a good start if we can't even connect. I'm pretty sure that if I just flip these and get like the right configuration, then it will just work. What's great is that when I did this, when I was streaming to no one, when I accidentally didn't press go, it worked perfectly first time. Yeah, this is timing out again. Let's set trust to true. Try that. Localhost 1433. Okay, that's not working. Let's do encrypt to mandatory. No, that's not happy. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to restart Azure Data Studio. Sometimes software just be annoying. Okay, server name, local host 1433. We're not Windows authentication, we're SQL. Our username is SA, password 1 with capital P. Database, we have no database in there, so that should just be default. We're going to put this to false again. False, name, local SQL server, and let's connect. This is going to be a long stream if I'm just going to sit here and debug this issue. There's no reason it shouldn't be working. Literally, I was expecting to fly through this step. Not really sure what the issue is. We can't really do a lot in here apart from stop or start it, so it's not really anything to do with Rancher. It's up and running. Maybe if we build it on another port. Target machine actively refused it. Okay, let's just build another container. Okay, so if yours works, if you've been following along and it works, then I'm sorry for this faff, but I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna run the same commands. We said password 1. Yeah, I spelled that right. That's great. I'm gonna map 14333 to 14333. So I'm gonna add an extra 3. I'm going to run that, and that's created our new container. So if I go out of containers and back into containers, Rancher's a little bit, containers are still an experimental feature. Still didn't give it a name, whoops, but that's okay. Okay, so now all we need to do is come over here and just change what we're connecting to our port with an extra 3 in it. Does that work? Maybe like there was like a conflict with the ports or something. It's one of those really annoying things where like it should just work and it doesn't. let's just go back to here. I did copy this whole thing, didn't I? Yep. Yep. Yeah. No, still not happy. Server was not found, was not accessible. Instance name is correct. Ah, the name. The name? Don't need to give it a name. Do I? No, I shouldn't do. What if I do a connection string? Let's try a connection string, and let's do server equals localhost, comma 14333, semicolon, database. Do we want a database, or do we not have a database? Let's omit database for now. User ID equals SA, semicolon, password equals, and then we're going to do single quotes around this, password 1, and then we're going to say encrypt equals false. Let's see if it likes this. Local SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server, let's try that. Still not going to work, is it? Of course it isn't. So we've got our container running. It's here. We can see the ports. We can see that it's a SQL Server. It's quite annoying. This is quite annoying. This was supposed to be like a 1-minute step, and this is this is frustrating. Username is required. Username is SA. Password is capital P. Password 1. Remember the password. Database. We have no databases in it. This is the point where if I was at work, I would just message someone and be like, nothing's working, help me. And then someone would just be like, oh yeah, you've just done this wrong. And then it would all be fine. Okay, connection timeout. Let's change that to like 5, 10 and 10, just so it takes less time to do all of that. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's not really going to help us. What if I just keep pressing connect until nothing happens? Let's keep. Siri, I hope you enjoy your paddling pool. I'm surprised you don't have one by now. I would have thought that you must buy one every weekend. I would have thought you'd have enough. This is probably potentially contender for the most boring stream on YouTube right now, because I'm not able to actually do what I was planning to do, which is kind of annoying, not gonna lie. So what can I do? Well, we've got our image here, Microsoft SQL Server. Right, I'm gonna delete that. Yeah. Oh, because the container's running, it can't delete the thing. Right, I'm gonna delete this container. I'm gonna stop it. I'm gonna delete it. I'm gonna go over to images. I'm gonna delete the SQL Server. Yep. Okay, I'm gonna close Rancher. Actually, maybe I need to reopen it. I just need to reopen everything. Refresh, restart. Okay. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna run this again. We're gonna use 1433 as the port, so the initial one from the command. And unable to find image. So this is what you should experience if you've never used this before. It's then going to start downloading things. Now, while it does this, it's going to take like 5 minutes. We're going to get our project set up and we'll come back to this. Okay. So I'm going to go to Visual Studio and I'm going to create a brand new project. We are going to start with a console app, but we're barely going to use our console app, but this going to choose that. I'm using this one here. It's in my recent, but I think I'm using this one here, the .NET on Windows. Next, we're going to call this console interface, because this is basically just how we're going to get output from our program, but it's not going to be where any logic or any magic happens. And I'm going to save it in b/source/advent of code. Yeah, that looks good. The solution is going to be called advent of code 2023, and we're going to go next, and we're going to net7 we're going to use, and we're going to create. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Now, we're going to instantly add a new project to this. So we're going to right click on the solution. We're going to come down, we're going to press add, we're going to press new project, and we are going to add a class library. This is where all of the magic is going to happen. We're going to press next. We're going to call this puzzle logic. Oh, I don't like that name. What would I call this? Puzzle solutions? But this is a solution. This is like puzzle solutions. Puzzle solutions. Perfect name. And we're going to make sure that's inside our Advent of Code 2023 folder, which it is. Lovely. We're going to press next. Net7 again. It needs to match what we created the console one in, and then we have our puzzle solutions. Straight off the bat, we need to do a few things. This next like 10 minutes is going to be really like boilerplatey, but we're going to get set up. Once we've done this setup, every other day is going to benefit from us having done this. So it's going to be worth it. First things first, we're going to go to puzzle solutions. We're going to add a new folder, and we're going to call it database, because this is where all of our code for accessing data in our database is going to go. And we're going to right click on that. We're going to add a new class, and we're going to call it AOC 2023 DB context. You'll notice I capitalized the first letter of any word or any abbreviation. Okay, so AOC is abbreviated, is Advent of Code abbreviated. DB is database abbreviated. So the first letter of those is, and that's kind of like a convention. Okay, boom. This DB context is actually going to be a DB context. However, Visual Studio doesn't know what a DB context is because we need to import some code. So we're going to right click on Puzzle Solutions, and we're going to press Manage NuGet Packages. And we're currently on installed, and you can see that we've got nothing installed. So we're going to go to Browse. And this is where all of the packages that you could ever want to download for anything are. So NuGet is a way of like getting code that someone else has written and using it in your own project that makes doing things a lot easier, because you don't have to worry about certain problems that have already been solved and someone's already written code for them. Which we're going to search for Entity Framework, which is what this is. This is a bunch of code that people have written to help us talk to databases really easily. So we're going to need 4 different packages. We're going to need Entity Framework Core first of all. Now we do not want latest stable 8 because we're using .NET 7. We actually want the a version starting with 7. I'm going to get the highest version, 7.0.14, and we're going to press install on that. It's going to be like, oh, we need to install all of this. Yep, sure, no worries. I accept. That's all good. Now we're going to also grab ourselves abstractions. Again, we're going to click on abstractions. We're going to make sure that we select 7.0.14, and we're going to install that. Okay, I accept. Then we're going to come down here. We're going to choose design. We're going to choose 7.0.14. We're going to install that. Yep, okay, I accept. And we're finally going to come down to SQL Server. Because we're using SQL to SQL Server as our database, we need the appropriate SQL Server commands, and we're going to pop that to version 7, and we're going to install that. We're going to press OK, I accept. Okay, now let's jump back to our DB context file. Now that we've done that, we can close this little thing here. It's like, still not sure what a DB context is, but if we press Control full stop, it's going to give us a bunch of options, and look, it's saying using Microsoft.Entity Framework Core, which is what we just added to this project. So I'm going to use that, and it's now going to be like, cool, I know what you mean. So first things first, we're actually going to make this class public, I believe. Don't think we want it internal. And we're going to add a few methods. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say protected override void on configuring, configuring, on configuring, and this is going to expect a DB context. I'm just copying from notes here. There's no way anyone will remember this without doing it loads and loads and loads of times. So yeah, this is the boring stuff where we're just getting set up, right? So this is an override method. So DB context is a class. It's some code that someone's already written, and it has a on configuring method that is allowed, that we're allowed to overwrite. Because we are inheriting the DB context class, our AOC 2023 DB context gets everything that DB context has, plus anything additional that we give it. So on configuring, what we're going to do here, we are going to say options builder .use SQL Server. Oh, it knows. I'm just using tab to autocomplete that when it gives those grey suggestions. And we're going to say server equals localhost. We're going to say localhost, comma 1433. Now, if we do end up using a different port later down the line, then we'd have to come in and change this. I think that's right. Server, yep. We're going to say database. I put a semicolon just before database. Database equals, and this is what we're going to name our database. I'm going to call it, what are we going to call it? AOC 2023. Yeah, seems reasonable. We're going to say user space ID equals, and each of these things is separated by a semicolon, okay? SA, the password is equal, I'm going to just drop this onto a new line just so it's not going off the screen. Password is equal to, and then we're going to put in single quotes, password 1. And then semicolon, then we're going to say encrypt equals false. Semicolon at the end of the line to make C# happy. Okay. Okay, that's looking good. We also need a protected override void on model creating. This is going to be useful later. It's not going to be useful right now, but we're just going to put the scaffolding in place. We're going to say model builder, yada, yada, yada. And that's just going to sit there. We're going to come back to that and add to it. So now we should be able to connect to our database using this code. Let's just jump over here. Let's see. Yep, this has downloaded the image. It's created a container. So we're going to open up Rancher. And everything is just going to be perfect. That's running. Lovely. We're going to open up Azure Data Studio. Everything's just going to work. I can feel it in my bones. Okay. Microsoft SQL Server parameters. Our server is localhost, comma 1433. It is 1433, right? We did do that in here. 1433. Yeah, I went back to that one. Cool. We're going to use SQL login. Our username is going to be SA super admin. Our password is going to be password1 with a capital P. Remember my password. Encrypt false, trust false. Name local SQL DB. DB lowercase? Why not? Connect. Come on. Come on. Please. Please. This whole thing just relies on this going, yep, cool. Could it be? I'm wondering whether I'm just getting the password wrong or something like that. I don't know whether, when I run this command, I don't know whether the password needs to be in like single quotes. I might try that. I don't think it does. Actually, let's just check the page that it came from. Am I just doing some, like, a really rookie error? No, it doesn't have that there in this. Okay. This isn't happy. I don't know whether it's because of the port. Let's try giving the name. I don't think this will work at all. This is like throw anything at the problem, because the thing I expected it to do isn't working. So maybe it's just doing something weird. Maybe I need to give it a weird maybe this weird problem needs a weird solution. I did this the other day and it worked perfectly, flawlessly, first time. Easy. Perfectly easy. Today, not so easy. I don't know whether my PC just is having a bad day. We all have bad days. Maybe it's going through some tough times. I might just make up a port. Server was not found or not accessible. Okay, so at least that is a different error message. So we know localhost is kind of right. 1433, but we're getting a different error message when we do this. We're doing something very subtly wrong. Very, very subtly. I say we, it's me. I'm doing something wrong. I don't know what it is. Going back to our code, let's delete that. In fact, let's delete this here. So back to our solution. We've got our database. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to import the data into our database. So we're going to want to add a folder, and we're going to want to call this data importers. And we're also going to right click on the solution itself. We're going to add a new folder and we're going to call it data, because we need somewhere to store our data files. Data importers actually wants to live inside database. So I'm just going to drag it inside there. So now we've got a database folder with data importers. We're going to make our first data importer. So I'm going to add a new class. We're going to call this day1 data importer. We're going to add that in. All it's going to do is it's just going to have a public void import method, and it's going to just import. Then we're always going to need to read a text file and grab the data. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make a base class. I'm going to right click on data importers. I'm going to add another class. We're going to be adding a lot of classes through this project, and we're going to call this data importer base. And this is going to be the base logic for like just grabbing a text file and adding it. Okay, so we're going to come in here. What we want to do is we want to know what day it is and what part it is. So our data file, let's add our data file in. So I'm going to go to, sorry, I'm jumping around all over the place here just so we can get set up. I'm going to add a new item, and we're going to add a text file. There it is. And we're going to call this day1-1. And we're going to call all of our data files in this particular format. Okay, so day and then the number of the day and then the number of the part. There are always two parts. Pretty much every puzzle will just have one amount of data for both parts, but occasionally I've seen puzzles that have separate data, so we'll need to distinguish between them. So we're going to add that into our data file. We're going to go back to our data importer base. Now our data importer base needs to know what day it is and what part it is. So we're going to say protected, because only the thing that inherits this can use this. Okay, we're going to say protected. We're actually going to say this is going to be public. Protected data importer base. And we are going to expect, whenever we make a data importer, we're going to expect to know two things. We're going to expect to know the day, which is an which is an integer, and the part, which is going to be equal to 1 unless we tell it otherwise. So it's always going to default to 1. Then we're going to have a cheeky little field in here called day, and we're going to have a cheeky little field in here called part, and we are going to add those in. Control dot generate field, control dot generate field. Fantastic. So now we've got this class. Whenever we make a data importer base, it's going to know what day it is, it's going to know what part it is. Then down here we're going to make ourselves a little method called something like protected string array, string square brackets, get puzzle import. No, we're not importing it. We'll just get puzzle data from file. We're not going to need to pass it any arguments. What we're going to do is we're going to say var data file equals path.combine. And so we just want to know where the data file is. Actually, we should probably call this data file path, and I've not named this correctly either. Use capital F. var dale fair player. Can't talk. Path.combine. I'm going to pop .combine on the next line, and just so it's easier to read. Now we're going to use a special variable called environment dot get off current directory. When we actually run our program, it's not going to be where the code is here currently. I don't know why I'm pointing at my screen, you can't see. It's not going to be where our code is currently, so it's going to be wherever we've built it. And so we don't know that right now, but when it's all put together, this will actually know where our data is. So we can use environment.current directory. That means this whole solution, or at least this whole project, Puzzle Solutions. So then we can say combine that with the path, and then we call the folder data slash day1 -1.txt, because that's our data file, right? day1-1.txt. However, it's not always going to be day 1, because sometimes it will be day 2. Well, on day 2, actually, it's day 3 now. 4? 3. It's day 3 now. So it should already be day 3. So we can't always say day 1. It's not always going to be part 1. It's mostly going to be part 1, but it's not always. I need to put a semicolon at the end here. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to whack a $ in front of this string, and instead of saying 1, we're going to put curly brackets, and instead of saying 1, we're going to put curly brackets. And inside this, we're actually going to put underscore day and underscore part, because they are the variables that we assign whenever we instantiate this class. So it'll know what day it is, it'll know what part it is, and it'll inject those in there, and it will pick the right file for us. So we've got our path. Then what we want to do is actually get our data. So we're going to say var data. It already knows what I want to do. This solution is writing itself right now. File.readAllText data file path. Lovely. Then what we're going to do is we're going to return data. We could have done that in 2 lines. It's neither here nor there. Cool. So then day1 data importer, we're actually going to say, actually, you inherit from data importer base. So everything that data importer base has, day1 data importer has. Fantastic. But it's not happy. It's not happy at all, because whenever we make a day importer base, it needs to know what day it is when we make it. So we need to say, okay, well, we're going to have a public day1 data importer. And just after the round brackets there, I'm going to put a colon. I'm going to say base. And you can see here it's suggesting that the first argument I need to provide is the day. And then I could provide part if I wanted to, but it will default to 1. So we're just going to say 1, so it knows what day it is. We're not actually going to do anything in here, I don't think. So we can actually just pop these curly boys. What happened there? Okay. We can just pop these curly boys on one line like that, just so our file isn't gargantuan. Import. The first thing we're going to do on import is we're going to get all of our text data from our file. So we're going to say var data equals, how do we get our file data? Well, we've already written a method for getting our file data here, but that's not here, but it is because we're inheriting this. So we can say equals get, and it should be suggesting this for us, puzzle data from file, because we are a data importer. We are a data importer base as well as a day one data importer. So we can say get data, come back, where were you? Get puzzle data from file. Okay, great. Now, we don't actually have the data yet. We don't actually have the database yet, which is incredibly awkward. Why won't you work? Please, please. Local, I've misspelled local host. Have I just been doing that the whole time? If I have, I'd be very happy. It's not going to be that though, is it? It's not going to be that easy. Wish it was that easy. No, it's taken a hot while. Let's go back here. In fact, I wonder whether we can connect to database. If we go to Tools, Connect to Database, Microsoft SQL Server. If we pop, ooh, please wait while we retrieve the list of servers. I wonder if it will find it. That would be cool. That would be really useful if it found the name, so we could like double check that we're using the right one. If it comes back and it's like localhost 1433, then we're onto a winner. I hope it does something. That would be great. No, nothing. Okay, cool. So we're going to say localhost, comma 1433. We're going to say SQL Server Authentication, SA, password 1, save my password. We don't actually have any databases in there. Loading database names. This is good. Because if it does manage to load, let's press test connection. Let's see if it actually is able to connect. Might just be Azure Data Studio. Who knows? Well, Visual Studio is broken. That's not a good sign. Brilliant, I'm getting the same issue. Same issue. What is going on? Instance name is correct. Configured to allow remote connections. It's definitely configured because this should just work out of the box. I was going to use this as a way to be like, hey, look how easy it is to get a database up and running. And this is, if anything, this has done the complete opposite. It's like, oh, look what an absolute nightmare it's going to be to get a database running. We copied this here. We changed the password. That's all we changed. This is frustrating. What's frustrating is that I've done this before and it's just worked, and now I'm doing it and it's not working. One thing I would like to do is see if I can give it a name. Let's stop this. Let's delete it. Let's go back to our terminal. What I want to do is, I've got this command, password 1, 1433, 1433. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to say SQL Server, Docker run SQL Server. Will that give it a name? No. Repository name must be lowercase. I reckon I probably need to give it something like dash name. Docker run help. Let's do that. Docker run help. Help! It's not working. How do I give you a name? Add host. Dash name. Did I just do single dash name? I did single dash name. It's It's actually double dash. Oh, beans. If you press up or down, you can go through like the last commands that you ran, and I accidentally did that. Got too excited. -- name SQL Server. Boom. Okay. Now this will be in here, and it will have a name now. Look, oh, lovely, fantastic. Azure, sure. Cancel. Let's add a new connection. Microsoft SQL Server parameters. There's nothing like doing exactly the same thing 100 times and not getting anywhere. Authentication, SQL login, SA, password 1. Remember password. I wish I could see this just to confirm that I'm typing it in wrong. If I'm typing it in incorrectly every time, gonna be mad. Okay, optional, false. Does that need to be true? Let's connect. Let's give it no name. Maybe that was it. Maybe I was giving it a bad name. Nope, it's taken ages. This is the great thing about programming, is that you get to just stare at loading icons for most of your life and watch it tick by. We've not even solved. This is so frustrating. So frustrating. I cannot even tell you how frustrating this is. It's configured to allow remote connections. It surely is. Surely is. Localhost 1433, SQL login, SA, password 1. How many times can I type that in? Really? Okay. Let's focus on this side of things. If we don't get the database working, we'll at least get the logic in place, and I'll off camera I'll find why it wasn't working, and I'll come back and sort it out. So we've got our puzzle solution here. We've got our data importers. Now we're gonna right click on database. We're gonna add a new folder called model. This is where we're going to add all of our database models. Now would be a good time to actually see what the problem is. So, advent of code. Right, why are we here? Oh yeah, there's a thing we're trying to solve, right? So, advent of code. Let's click on day 1. Trebuchet. Something is wrong with global snow production. Hang on. I need to put my reading glasses on. Something is wrong with global snow production, and you've been selected to take a look. The elves have even given you a map. On it, they've used stars to mark the top 50 locations that are likely to be having problems. These are the stars that we're going to be collecting every day. You've been doing this long enough to know that to restore snow operations, you need to check all 50 stars by December 25th. Blah, collect stars, yeah. You try to ask why they can't just use a weather machine, not powerful enough, and whether they're even where they're even sending you, the sky, and why your map looks mostly blank. You sure ask a lot of questions. And hang on, did you just say the sky? Of course. Where do you think snow comes from? When you realise that the elves are already loading you into a trebuchet. Please hold still, we need to strap you in. As they're making the final adjustments, they discover that their calibration document, your puzzle input, has been amended by a very young elf who is apparently just excited to show off her art skills. Consequently, the elves are having trouble reading the values on the document. The newly improved calibration document consists of lines of text. Each line originally contained a specific calibration value that the elves now need to recover. On each line, the calibration value can be found by combining the first digit and the last digit in that order to form a single 2-digit number. For example, 1 ABC2 would give you 12. PQR3STU8VWX would give you 38. A1B2C3D4E5F would give you 15. And trebuchet with a 7 in it would give you 77 because there's only one 7, so it'd be the first and the last number, if that makes sense. Consider your entire calibration document. What is the sum of all of your calibration values? Now, awkwardly, you can see here, it's got the correct answer there because I've already answered this. Did a stream a couple of days ago, didn't press go, was just talking to myself for 2.5 hours. It went perfectly, but it didn't record. Awkward. We're going to come down here and we're going to grab our puzzle input. Now, it's all of these lines. There's 1,000 lines here that we're going to need to write a program to go through. We're going to copy all of this and we're going to come over to Advent of Code. We're going to go into our day1.txt and we're going to paste that in there. I need to take these reading glasses off, otherwise they're going to fall off my head. Okay, cool. So what we need to do is we need to put all of these in our day1 data importer. So get puzzle data from file is going to take every single line from this file and it's going to give it to us in a big list. And then we're going to need to go through that list of each line. And we're going to need to put it into the database in a way that makes sense. So we need a model. We need to model our data. So inside model, actually, what was it called? What was it called? What was it called here? It was called a calibration value. So that's what we're going to call it. Okay. So we're going to come over here. We're going to go to model. We're going to add a class, and we're going to call it calibration model. And we're going to make this public. And a calibration model is going to, when we create it, it's going to figure out which bits it needs. So we're just going to give it a line, and inside the calibration model, we're going to work out calibration model, calibration value. I've already got that wrong. That's terrible. I hope I did something like that with the database, and it's actually, that's like super on my mind right now. It's like a little house. It's like being outside and just seeing that your house is on fire. Just like, actually it's not like that, because I'd be a lot more panicked. It's like putting your dinner in the oven and then having to run to the shop, and just in the back of your mind you're like, oh, it could burn if I'm late. So we're going to grab our line here, and we're going to say public string. Ooh, do we want a string? We do want a string, and we're going to call it, what does it want from us? What does it want from us? Okay, we're going to call this digits only. Is that a good name? Don't know. Get private set. Nothing outside of this class is going to be able to set this variable, but everything will be able to get it. Cool beans. Cool beans. Terrible. Terrible. Okay, we need to do something now, right? We need to do something with this line. So every line that we get given, we need to go through every character, and we need to check whether it's a number or a letter. You can do this with something called a regular expression, but I've sat here enough trying to configure a database. I don't want to sit here for the next half an hour and like work out a perfect regular expression. I'm not very good at them off the top of my head. So what we're going to do instead is we're just going to use a cheeky little loop. So we're going to say public string get digits, and we are going to expect a string called line again. Why not? And actually, let's call it input. Line doesn't make sense in the context of this. We're going to say for each var c. C stands for character. I think we get away with just calling it c. We could just call it character. Character for var character. You're right. We shouldn't use shorthand like that. You're absolutely right. For var character in input, we are going to say we're going to try and make it into a number. So how are we going to do that? We're going to say if int dot try parse. Try parse will try and take some text and make it into a number, and if it is able to make it into a number, it will be like, cool, that's true, and if it doesn't, it's going to be like, boo, that's false. And we can use the result of this to test whether it got made into a number successfully or not. We're going to try and parse that character, and it gives us an out var, an out variable, and we don't need it. So it's going to give us the actual integer that it was able to transform the text into. Do I need to say var? Do I need to say that? Do I need to say out var? Out var? Yeah, out var that. Why is that complaining? Yeah, I was about to do that. some people. Character. Why are you invert if? Are you actually unhappy? Cannot convert from char to system.read-only span char. Show potential fixes. Introduce parameter for character. Why are you being weird? Should I just call dot to string on this? Will you be happy then? Why are you unhappy? Our character cannot be declared because it's... What? Oh, right, I accidentally put that there. I don't want that there. Okay, to string, now it's happy. Fine. So if it is actually that number, we want to add that number, that particular character to our string. So we're going to say var result equals string.empty. We're going to use string.empty instead of two quotes because two quotes might just be that you meant to type something in there and you forgot, whereas string.empty is very clearly you want an empty string. If that is a number, we're going to add it into our result. So we're going to say result plus equals... Can I plus equals a character into a string? You bet your bottom dollar I can. So that goes in there, that goes in there. We're going to loop through all of that. We're going to return our result. Perfect function. Now what we're going to do is we're going to say digits only equals line. Okay, we have got our data into our table in a sensible way. This is lovely. This is perfect. The only imperfect thing is that we can't actually connect to our database. But hey, they didn't have databases in Stone Age, so they got on fine. Okay, so digits. We've got our model here. Now we need to add it when we import. So we're going to go to our day one data importer. We're going to say for each var, instead of saying item, we're going to say var line in data. And we are going to make a model using our calibration value. So model equals a new calibration value. And we're going to pass in that line. And then it's going to know what to do with that line because we've already told it, right? We just spent time programming what it's going to do with that line. No, we didn't. We just said equals line. That's not what we want to do. We want to say get digits. Almost bungled that. Digits only equals get digits line. Okay. So whenever we make one of these, it creates a string from this string using this method. Okay. Perfect. Then what we need to do is add this to the database. How on earth do we do that? Well, sore subject, because we don't actually have a database up and running, but nevertheless, db context equals a new AOC 2023 db context. Lovely. And when this is working, believe me, it will be one of the databases of all time. Once we've got a model, we're then going to say, we're going to add it to our data. Oh, have I just deleted something? Probably not. I'm fine. We're going to say db context.add. No, we're not. We're going to say, it was almost right then, what it suggested to me. We're going to say db context dot, and then we're going to choose our table name, right? Now, we don't actually have any tables in here at the moment, so we can't add it. So we need to go to our db context and fix that. So we're going to come over here. We're going to come up to the top, and we're going to make a public db set of type calibration value. And it's going to be like, what on earth is a calibration value? Never heard of that in my life. Control dot. We're going to tell it to use puzzlesolutions.database.model. We're going to call this day one. We're going to get set. What we're going to do is we're going to put a little question mark after this, like that. That means that this table might not exist. And basically, there's very boring reasons for why we need to do this. Later down the line, if we don't do this, it creates some very boring problems. So we need to put that there. Basically, I don't want to bore you or myself to tears with elaborating on that, but we're going to make that nullable. Okay, that just basically means it can be nothing. It doesn't have to exist. But it's always going to exist, which is the annoying thing, because it is always going to exist, but sometimes... Right. Anyway, db context dot day one. Look, there you can see it's there. Day one dot add. I'm going to add our model. Now, day one might not exist, so we need to put a question mark after it. And then after our for loop, we're going to say db context dot save changes. Now we need to do a little bit of configuring of our model. We're not quite out of the woods yet with our database stuff. So all we need to do is make sure that where our calibration value has an ID. Okay, so we're going to need something like this, public int ID. However, every single thing that we put in this database is going to need this. So we're actually not going to do that here. We're going to make another base class for this. Not another base class. We've already made a base class, but not in this area. We made it for the data importer. We're going to make a new class, and we're going to call it generic db model.cs. And our generic db model is going to be... Ooh, is this going to be... This is going to be internal. We're going to leave this as internal. And it's literally going to have that public int ID. Because we just want anything that goes in the database to have an ID. Okay. So our calibration value is going to inherit that. So colon generic DB model. And now it's going to have an ID property. And we can check that by, why are you unhappy now? Inconsistent. Oh, okay. Maybe this does need to be public. Bosh. Okay. Yeah, you're happy now. We can test that by going, we can just type ID and you can see it comes up there and you can see it says generic dbmodel.id. So we've actually got access to that ID, which is fantastic. Okay. What we need to do is we need to tell our database that when we create the model, we want it to use the ID and just assign each model like an incrementing ID, but we don't want to deal with all of that. We want it to do it. So we're just going to write a little bit of code here. We're going to write a private method. What's it going to be called? Configure ID. Configure ID. And we're actually going to write a method that takes a type argument. So we're going to put brackets like that. Then not like crocodile brackets. They've got a much better name than that, but you know what I mean. Configure ID. Configure ID is going to take the model builder as well. And we're going to call it model builder with a lowercase m. And we are going to say, you're kind of right there. So first of all, this type argument needs to be a T. Okay, so we're going to pop a capital T in there. That means some kind of type. We don't know what it is. Then we're going to say model builder dot entity of type T. I'm going to pop a we're going to make a new line there just to make this, it's going to be a bit of a long line just to give us a bit more space. Dot has key, and we're going to say our model, and then this little arrow, so an equals and then a greater than sign, and I'm going to say model.id. I don't like the fact that model has a capital M. I'm going to get rid of that, change that to lowercase, and then I'm going to say dot has name, and we're going to give that a name. Now the name is going to be based off of what type the model is. We're going to do like a little bit of finagling. Again, this is just like boilerplate stuff that like we're going to do once and then never look at it again. So we're just going to type this out. I'm just referring to some notes here. This is just to help us get set up. So it's going to be curly brackets, type of T, and curly, no, not end curly brackets, dot to string, dot split, and we're going to split on a dot. Oh, hello. Yeah, does that work so far? Yep. Dot last. I didn't do a dot, I did a comma. Fantastic. Dot last, and then we're going to end our curly brace, do an underscore, and then ID. what's this doing? Okay, it's getting the type of whatever we pass it. So if we pass it our calibration value, it's going to take that type, it's going to convert it to a string, it's going to split it on the dot. Now the type of a calibration value is actually going to be puzzle solutions dot database dot model dot calibration value. When we split it, it's going to separate these into the elements that are separated by a full stop. And then we're going to take the last thing, which is calibration value. So when this bit of code runs, we're actually going to end up with calibration value underscore ID. And that's going to be super happy. Now this is like, right here, this is like, hang on a minute. You're saying that you're going to have a model in this, right? But how do I know that it's going to have an ID? It might not have an ID. Everything's going to break. You can't do this. This is an error, okay? But we're always going to give it an ID because it's always going to be a generic database model that we've made here that always has an ID. And we need to assure it. We need to assure it. We need to let it know. So we're actually going to say colon. Do I need a colon? I don't need a colon yet. We're going to say where t colon is a generic DB model. And then it's going to be like, oh, okay, as long as it's always a DB model, then absolutely, I will do all of this for you. Now, we're not actually using this yet, so we're going to use this now. So when we're making our models, when the database is making models, we can like tell it to behave in a certain way. And this is one way that we're telling it to behave. We're telling it how to use the ID as a key in the database. So we're going to say configure ID for calibration value, and we are going to put round brackets there, semicolon, and we're going to pass in our model builder, and that's going to do it for this database section now. Okay, so that's all set up. This is all set up to import the data. We've got our generic DB model, we've got our calibration value. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually make our puzzle solution. You can see we've got this class file here. It's kind of useless. I'm just going to delete it. It's gone. I could have just renamed it and stuff, but it's kind of awkward. Let's just check on our database. Yeah, of course it's not working. Why would it work? That would be ridiculous. I'd hate it if it was working. I think we can do like docker ls. Help if I could spell it. Docker ls is not a command. How do I see all the containers that are running? Docker, is it just the word list? I'm sure there's like, oh, maybe it is just list. La 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 la. I'm not seeing list here. Maybe it's Docker container. Docker container ls? Aha, sure enough. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's open this up. So apparently we've got quite a few containers, but this is the one we care about. I wonder whether there's like a Kubernetes thing that's messing with this. Let's go to, not there, preferences. And let's go to Kubernetes and let's disable Kubernetes. Yeah. Maybe I've just not configured this very well. Apply. That's shutting Kubernetes down. I wonder if that's going to make any difference. That's a game changer if that works. This is now doing things. Can you see what I was talking about earlier in like the corner where it's like just secretly doing stuff? It's not secretly doing it, but it's not like doing it in your face. You can just about see. It's like I'm covering some of it up, but it's like it's doing bits and bobs. I wonder if I just did this naturally last time and completely forgot about it. If this works, I'm gonna be so happy. I'm gonna be the happiest elf in Greenland. Where is it? North Pole? In the North Pole. Greenland is actually snowier than Iceland for most of the time. Fun little fact. Iceland's quite green, Greenland's quite icy. Go figure. Okay, let's start this. This is where, that was it. I'm sure of it. I'm sure. Please. Man loses sanity in real time. This stream wasn't meant to be this long. Definitely not this long. It's just been this one stupid thing. Maybe I should have used Docker Desktop. I don't know. I don't know. I'm now tempted to like restart everything and try again. Yeah, so let's close that. Let's close this. Let's start again. So first things first, let's open Rancher. I can't even spell Rancher. It's bad, isn't it? Need to learn. Let's do some spellings. Let's go to containers, and we're going to stop this, and we're going to delete it. Okay, gone. Now what we're going to do is we're going to recreate that container. If I press up a few times, Docker run SQL Server, yes, password 1433, cool, go. We created that. If we come out of containers and back in, we should see it there, lovely, and then we're going to open up Azure Data Studio once again. There's nothing like being optimistic. Especially optimistic, seeing as I've done this a million times and it's always worked. It's going to be one stupid thing. I'll get off the stream and I'll be like, oh. I just forgot how to spell password. That's all it was. I'm putting an exclamation mark instead of a 1. That's all it was. Wonder whether this actually loads anything. I doubt it. It's probably just a waste of time. So encrypt, false, false. Yep, connect. It's not going to happen. We'll just write the code that solves the puzzle, and we'll just trust that it would work if there was a database in the middle passing the data between us and it would be really nice to show you this working. It would be delightful. This taking so long, this is not a good sign. It should be pretty rapid. Application, I don't know what that means. I'm going to leave all of this. Okay, back to the code. Now we're going to add a new class. And we're going to call this what are we going to call this? We're going to call this puzzle. Day 1 puzzle. Day 1 puzzle? Day 1 puzzle. That's it. That sounds okay, doesn't it? Day 1 puzzle. We're going to say to. Now, every day is always going to have two things. First thing it's going to have is a method called public string solve day 1. And it's going to have a public string, Visual Studio knows, solve day 2. And they're each going to return a string, okay? So at the moment, I'm just going to say return an empty string. I'm going to leave that as 2 speech marks because actually we're going to put things inside it. It's not always going to be an empty string, obviously. Otherwise, we would know all the answers already, so it would just be an empty string. Solve day 1, solve day 2. Lovely, perfect puzzle. Now, all we need to do is work out how to actually solve them, and then we'll have the answer. Now, our console interface, we haven't actually touched yet. If we come up here to the project that we made right at the start, if we come into program, we can do a couple of things. So we can say day 1. I wonder whether the code will work, but just Azure Data Studio won't. That would be interesting. It's wishful thinking. Right, first of all, we need var. Let's not get carried away with ourselves. Okay, var importer equals new day one data importer. And it is like, what the heck is a day one data importer? I've never heard of that. I'm a console interface. I know things like console.writeline. I do not know what a day one data importer is. And we're like, I do. I wrote it. I know exactly what this is. You need to know about it too. We're going to go over to our console interface project. We're going to right click on it, and we are going to add a project reference. Add project reference, and we're going to tell it that, hey, you need to know about this, okay? Because there's some hot logic in here that we're going to want you to use. I'm going to pop back over to program, and now if we press Control Dot, it still doesn't know about it. What? Try again. Have I named it wrong? Day one data importer. Day one data importer. Let's just copy that. I think I've typoed somewhere. No? Why does everything hate me? Let's just make sure that added. Add project reference. Puzzle solutions. Sure. Oh, have I done something really silly, like made this internal? I have. So because that's internal, it's only, you can only see it in the projects. No matter if you've like imported that project somewhere else, we have to make sure this is public, otherwise we can't see it. Now if we come over to the program and we press Control Dot, it's like, oh, you want to use the data importers, that's where that lives, and we can be like, yeah, that's exactly what we want to do. We can then say importer.import, and then we can say, in fact, let's just do a quick cheeky console.writeline, and we're going to say importing, and then we're going to say finished importing. Semicolon at the end of each line. Now we want our var puzzle day to equal a new day one puzzle. And it's like, what on earth is that? And we're like, we forgot to change this to public as well. So we're going to make that public. Cool. Then we're going to try using puzzle solutions, lovely. Then we're going to console.writeline, and we're going to put $. Ooh, actually, we need to actually get the results first. So we're going to say var day part one result equals puzzle day dot solve day one, and we're going to say var part two result equals puzzle day dot solve day two, and then we're going to say console.writeline part one is part one result. We're going to say duplicate that, and we're going to say that was Control D, by the way, on the line, and you can just duplicate for as long as you want. Control Z if you accidentally go a bit too far. Part two result. Lovely stuff. Now let's run this. What's the worst that can happen? It can just say can't find a database. What's the worst that can happen? There can be errors before it even runs. Yep, cool. So it's saying we can't find this file, and I will do this every day. I will forget to do this. We're going to come over here, day1.txt. We're going to right click on it. We're going to go to properties. We're going to change copy to output directory to always, and we're going to check build action to content. And that means it's actually going to copy the data file across so it can be found. There was another error. What was it? Here. Return data dot read all text. Okay, this shouldn't be read all text. This should be read all lines because we want it in an array. Cool. Let's run it again. Importing. It's trying. If this actually works, it won't. There's gonna be an error. But a boy can dream. A boy can dream. Wait, is that an exception? There is an exception. Ah, okay, this is a good exception. I know how to fix this. No suitable construction. So, for some... Yeah. For some annoying reason... Right, here's what's going to happen. We need to do this, but it's also going to complain that we do it. So we're going to say public calibration value, and we're just going to leave it like that. But it's going to underline it most likely. Is it not? Brilliant. Okay, it's not. It will. Later on it will underline it and be like, you don't need this is redundant. But we do need this. We just need that there so it can like make this without doing all of this stuff. Probably. Okay, importing. Broke. Keyword not supported. Encrypty. Where? Encrypty. Keyword not supported. Encrypty. What on earth? I've never seen that before. Oh, encrypty. Encrypty equals false. That's awkward. Encrypt. Okay, I had a little typo in the connection string here. Server equals localhost, database AAC. Yeah, okay. Let's restart the program. Importing. Now, if it takes ages, if it takes like 30 seconds, that we know that just means it's the database timing out and we're not actually able to connect to it. So the fact that it's not doing, yeah, there we go. It's hit an error. Okay, it wasn't able to connect to the SQL Server. No problem. We will get it running. We've got all the code. We can't prove the code works, but we got all the code. We're going to actually solve day one now. So we are going to, all of our data, we're going to assume is in the database. We know it's not because we're having database issues, but we're going to assume it's in the database. So we're going to need a new database context. So we're going to say var db context equals a new AOC 2023 DB context. And we're then going to say DB context. Ooh, ensure created. We don't want that here, but actually we do want that in our importer. When we import, when we make this, we actually want to make sure that our database is created. It's up to date. And we also, while we're here, we will add in ensure deleted as well. So if we're like refreshing the database, we want to like delete any old data, add in new data. We want to delete it, add it back in. So we're going to ensure deleted, ensure created before we add our stuff in. Okay, so that's done. We can say db context dot day one dot. Okay, so I'm going to put the dot on new line to list. to list. Okay, once we've done to list, we're then going to new line. We're going to say dot. Okay, day one needs a question mark after it. Make that happy. We're going to be using a thing called link. A link is hugely powerful for like filtering out lists and things. We're going to transform this data. Now what we've done with our import is we've essentially, I'm going to undo these changes, but we've essentially stripped out all characters so that we're only left with numbers like that. So we're left with things like this, okay? So this is what these are the values that are going to be in our database. So the first value will be 42. What we want to do is we want to take the first number and the last number, and we want to join them together to make a 2-digit number. Now this one is a 2-digit number, which is fine. This is a 3-digit number. So this, we don't want it to be 43, we don't want it to be 31, we actually want it to be 41. Okay, so 4, we want to take the 1. So we need to take the first and the last, combine them, make them an integer, and then sum them all together. So we need the sum. I'm going to not save any of that I just did. So we're going to say select dot select. Select allows you to like apply a transformation to everything in your data. So everything in this list, all of our numbers, we're going to select our let's just call it num. it's like a string, but it's a number in a string format. Num is going to transform into, I'm using the arrow syntax again, and we're going to say in curly braces, we're going to say num at position 0. And then in curly braces, we're going to say num at position num.length, please. Why aren't you giving me... Because it's not num, is it? Num is the model. Num is calibration value. What we actually want is digits only. So we want num.digits only. Okay. Num.digits only, 0. Num.digits only at position num.digits only dot length -1. So we're taking the first value, the thing at position 0 here, and we're taking the last value, the thing at the length -1. And we are selecting all of those. Now this is where link is really powerful, because we can literally, actually, do we want to parse that? We probably want to parse that right here as well. So we're going to say int.parse. We're not going to try parse because we know this is going to be a number, because we've already tried parse before the data came into the database. So we can actually completely work on the assumption that this is an integer. So now we transformed a list of string numbers into a list of 2-digit integers, okay, guaranteed. Now this is particularly good because it'll work for things that are even 1 digit. So if it's just a 7, the thing at position 0 would be a 7, and also the thing at length -1 would be a 7, because that would just be at position 0 again. So that's perfect, it covers all bases. And then we're just going to say .sum. Going to assign this to result equals, and we're going to return result. Need a $, at the front there, and that there. Okay, that is day 1 solved, and if the database is working, we'd run this and it would be perfect and glorious. Okay, if it is working for you, crack on, run it, it will work. And if you do get an answer out of it, pop over to Advent of Code, pop it in the box, press submit, and it will give you a nice gold star. You can see we've got 1 gold star here. Now we're going to work on the solution for number 2, and then at the start of the day 2 stream, I will like run it, and you'll see it working because I'll have the database fixed, and I'll show you how to get the database fixed. I'll show you what I did wrong once I figured it out. So we won't actually answer this today. We'll answer it at the start of the next stream. But we're going to write the solution for it. So all of this code, I'm having to, because the database doesn't work, I'm having to write without testing it, which is awful, which is terrible. But this is all like just setup stuff. It's compiling and it's running. It's just running into an issue when it hits the database. So we're good. We're golden. Now for day 2, the puzzle changes slightly. So let's go over here. We go to part 2. Let's imagine we just generated the answer 55816. Of course we did, with our perfect code. And we pop that in. We got a gold star. Great, lovely. Part 2. Your calculation isn't quite right. It looks like some of the digits are actually spelled out with letters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 also count as valid digits. So if we go over to the doodah here, day 1, you'll see like here, we've actually got numbers spelled out. So what we need to do is need to find any numbers that are written in the text and convert them to their digit form. Equipped with this new information, you now need to find the real first and last digit on each line. For example, 219 would actually equate to 29, whereas in the first example it would equate to 11 because we would just pick out the 1 twice. Okay, so this is just a data import issue, right? So we're having to change how we import the data. We're not actually having to change how we access the data once it's imported. And that's a really important distinction for what we're going to be doing for this whole thing. So for solving day 2, it kind of seems criminal, but I'm just going to copy this and I'm just going to paste it in to solve day 2. As far as I'm concerned, solve day 2 is going to be exactly this part as solve day 1, because we're just going to prepare the data in a different way. Actually, the only thing we're going to do is we're going to change what property we access here. Digits only. It's not going to be digits only. We're going to jump into calibration value. We're going to have another string. We're going to call it public string, and we're going to call it digits with words. Oh no, hate that. All digits. Digits only and all digits. No, hate that too. With words. Words included. You can overthink these things. You can overthink these things. Let's pop that there. With words. I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. I'm not happy. I'm not happy that I've called it that. Digits. There's one that's got digits only, and there's one that's using with words. Is that okay? Digits only. Words too. Calibration value dot with words. I think that makes sense. Calibration value dot with words dot digits only. It makes sense in the... Totally makes sense. We're going to just remember to do this here now before we get carried away. So we're just going to change digits only down here to with words, num dot with words. That's going to be the only change to solve day 2. Okay, we're just accessing a different property. We're going to come back over to our calibration value. This is where the magic's going to happen. Now, we are going to say with words equals get digits and words line. And what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this whole get digits method, and we're going to let's paste it above. Let's minimize that down, paste that here, get digits and words. Okay, now for every character in the string, if that character is a number, we don't want a for each, I don't think. I think we want a for loop. We're going to do a for loop. For var I equals 0, I is less than input lot length. It knows. Visual Studio at this point can write half your project for you. It's great. We're going to say var character equals input at position I. Didn't want to get rid of that. Okay, great. So if it is a number, then just add it to the string. Then we're going to say continue. And what continue means is ignore everything else that's inside the loop, go back up to the top, start again. Carry on going. Not start again, but carry on. Next iteration of the loop. And then we're going to have some logic down here. So if it's not a number, what we want to do is we want to chop a string out, and we want to check whether that is a word. So we're going to say we're going to say private actually. We're going to say private string get digit from word. We're going to pass it a word. When I say word, I mean a sequence of characters. It won't actually always be a word. It could just be gobbledygook. If we look at our input, like this first 5 letters, HCPJS, that's not a word. But in this, we'll just kind of call it word. It'll be fine, probably. So we're going to get a digit from the word. We're going to have a dictionary in here. So we're going to say var mappings, I guess, equals a new dictionary of type string to string, and we're going to add in all of our mappings here. So we're going to say, I can do that, and then I can say, so I don't think 0 was included. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Cool. So I'm going to say 1 is mapped to 1. We're going to say 2 is mapped to 2. Thank you, Visual Studio. We're going to say 3 is mapped to 3. Lovely stuff. We'll say 4 is mapped to 4. G is mapped to 5. Visual Studio. I mean, it was helpful. It put in some stuff for me, but A is, yeah, brilliant. I guess let's just use the structure. 6, 6. I just did Control D there. 7, 7, 8, 8, and 9, 9. Cool. So we now have all of these mappings. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go through every mapping. So we're going to say for each var mapping in mappings. I think mapping is a key value pair. Let's just check. Yep, key value pair. So that means it contains the key, which is this side, and the value, which is the one this side. So the word is the key, and the actual digit is the value. So we're going to say if word.index of mapping.key. So equals 0. So what this is saying is, let's imagine we had a string. Let's say our word here is something like 1FG, right? If we find 1 in here and it starts at position 0 right here, then that would be true. If it didn't start at position 0, if it was like F1, then it wouldn't start at position 0. It would be phone isn't a number in here, so it wouldn't count. Okay, so that would return false. If index of mapping.key equals 0, then what we're going to do is we're going to return mapping.value. Otherwise, we're just going to return string.empty. So we're going to check whether any of these numbers are in this word, and if they're not, then we just return an empty string. If they are, then we return the digit value. Now, the longest written number is 5 characters, so we need to send a 5-character substring to this method. So we're going to say result plus equals get digit from word, and we're going to pass in input dot substring, and we're going to go from I, wherever I is in our loop, and we're going to go up to 5. Now, the issue with this, there's a couple of issues with this. First issue is that we are looping up to the length, right? So we only want to do this if I is less than 5. You can't have a 2-digit number, so we don't actually want to do this if I is 2 or less. If it is 2 or less than input.length. So we just need to put a little bit of defense around this. So we're going to say, in fact, that 5 might change as well. We might do something different with this. We might make it into a variable or something. So we're going to say if I is equal to is less than input length minus 5. So if we had an input that was 10 characters, so it'd be going from 0 to 9, length would be 10, minus 5 would be 5, 5 add 5 would be 10, so we'd actually need to do minus 6, I think. 9 minus 10 minus 6 would be 4. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Maybe we'll get away with 5. This might be off by 1, and we might have to come in and change it. That's fine. This is the kind of thing where I would just run the code, and if it worked, it would be great. If it didn't, we're fine. if I is less than input dot length minus 5, then we're going to do this with 5 characters. We're then going to want to do it for 4 characters and for 3 characters. We won't do it for 2 characters. So as we're getting towards the end of the string and there's less characters for us to consider, we need to reduce how many characters we're sending off to this method. So we're going to... I'm trying to think of a clever way to do this than just a stupid if statement. Let's do... let's cut that. Let's put that down here. We're going to say var size equals 5. Okay. If I is less than input.length. Right, first of all, if I is less than, if I is greater than input.length minus 3, if input.length was 10, minus 3 would be 7. 7, 8, 9 would be a 3-digit. So we'd actually want to do minus 2. If I is greater than or equal to... Oh, I'm losing my mind. I don't know why I'm finding this so hard today. Then we just want to continue. In fact, I can get rid of these brackets and I can just say continue, because if it's 2 digits left, we don't need to worry about checking, because there's no words that are that long. Again, I might be off by 1 there. My poor little peanut brain can't wrap itself around that. If I is greater than input.length minus 2, so if input.length is greater than 3, minus 3, or greater than or equal to minus 2, I think. Because minus 3 would give us 7 if we had 10 characters, and we don't care if we're only on the last 2. So if I is greater than input.length minus 3, so if I is 7, that's not greater than, so it runs. Then when I is 8, 8, 9, 10, oh, maybe it's minus 2. No, 8, no, sorry, 8, 9, because there'd be the 2, yeah, fine. That works. Okay, after all of that, if we end up down here, so remember, continue sending us to the top of the loop. If we end up down here, var size equals 5. If I is greater than input.length minus 4, I wanted 2 characters here, and I did greater than minus 3. I want 4 characters here, so I should do input.length minus 5, and size equals 4. And then I think we can just do another one where we say if I is greater than input.length minus 4, then size equals 3. If I is greater than input.length minus 3, then we don't care about it. So if our input is 10 and we if length is 10 and we minus 4, we get 6. 6, 7, 8. So if it's greater than 6, so if it's 7, 7, 8, 9, that's 3 characters. Yeah, that works. So this will trigger first. It's important that this comes before this one, because then that'll change that. That's fine. And then instead of using 5 here, we're going to use size there. That's going to build our digits. We can't check it in the database because it's not working. Okay, but that is our solution so far. Okay, I'm going to come back for day 2, and we're going to figure out the database problem. We're going to make sure that both of these parts are working, and then we're going to move on to solving day 2. Day 2 will be solved so much more quicker because now we've put in all the scaffolding for everything that we need to do. As we go on, we are going to change things like making things a little bit better. We're going to use some interfaces and just generally improve our code. We're also going to add a couple of little quality of life touches to it as well, just to make the project easier to work with. But we're going to do that iteratively as we go on. If you have watched this, thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry you didn't have anything better to do, and I'm sorry that this didn't go as I planned it to. And again, I did do the stream a day ago, and everything worked perfectly. So yeah, I'll see you in the next stream, and we'll see these working. We'll see the database in action, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much.